recall one time we opened for In Excess. Do you remember that?
Yes.
We opened for In Excess at McNichols Arena in Denver. And the night before, the night after, we did the national anthem at the as like an ask for the radio station or something. And we had practiced it and had a really cool diving harmony thing. And we were like, we got a really good, and we went up and sang it. And we just did this like abridged version. I don't know what we were thinking.
We skipped the second verse of the national anthem. That's what Andrew's trying to say. We were in front of the Denver Nuggets, and I swore I thought we were going to. Like, we left the center court, and we were so happy. We were like,
I was like,
we nailed that.
Come on.
We walked by some dude. He's like, he started heckling us, like, how dare you? And it was not long after Rosie O'Donnell had, like, totally, like, tanked the anthem. And then they sat us right on the court, like, right behind the Nuggets. And I was like, oh, geez.
Right.
We're totally going to be on television.
Totally. We're going to be an ESPN for bloopers for sure. We were sitting right in back of the bench, too, and it was like a last-second shot that won the game. It was an amazing game. I remember that, too.
Oh, I didn't even remember that. But
I forgot why we started this, how the feelings will fade to no longer resist the distance that comes and all of those things that we missed. I remember the place where we first met, when we sat and we talked until no one was left, when the bartender said, I'm sorry, but I need my rest. We closed down. We closed down. You gotta go somewhere else. We closed down. We took our hopes home to rest. In the same place, not on the same spot. You cheat a little, and I'll cheat a lot, convincing myself that I'm honest when I know that I'm not. So you drown out your anger, you drown out your fear. When the shit hits the fan, somehow steer your way clear. But this path keeps on twisting, year after year after year, until you close down. You close down, shut it all out. You close down, forgetting what love was about. There's a car in the road with its wheels turning stuck. The driver, he curses and he slams his door shut. It's a quiet frustration, it may lead you down into this rut. And this headlights streaming, they light up your face. I wanna jump in my car and drive it away, but the motor turns over. Slowly it brings you to way till you close down. can hear the ghosts making the rounds. The buildings are crumbling and we're walking around. We're tearing down what we made without making a sound. So let's jump in that car, escape while we can from this drift that's becoming an avalanche. I don't wanna be buried with these ghosts. They don't understand how we close down. We close down. We close down. Close down.
That's amazing. So as we moved into after Atlantic and we were doing these records that were just for fans, really.
Right.
Our creative process was dictated a little bit. You started traveling then, right?
Right.
Is that I don't recall exactly all the different things, but you were bilocating for a while.
Totally. It was a little bit of a rough period. Like I said, I had so defined by music. So I had with my identity. So I went through some fits and starts with travel, and I basically just hit the road. And I had safe haven up here in Connecticut with my uncle and his wife. They had a farm, and I'd come up here and kind of recuperate. And then, Jennifer, I went and worked as a carpenter with Jennifer in Detroit. I lived in Detroit for a couple of years. I met a woman who was a reporter at the Detroit News, and we had a relationship for a couple of years. So, and then I was moving back and forth from California in between all that. I was moving in that time, but directly after Bloom, let's put it in timeline.
Yeah.
The New Year's Eve, I started driving out to live in California of 1996.
Okay.
And then then I spent like 6 months in San Francisco, and then I moved down to Mike Matuzak's garage apartment in Venice, and I lived there for a year and a half.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. And so that's where I first had that ADAT, and that's where I really did my first bit of like soul recording, which wasn't because I had such an odd experience, right? I got automatically signed with only 20 or 30 songs in my pocket, right? I mean, holy moly, right? It's like, so now I'm like, after that experience, I'm sitting on the beach in Venice, California, going to play volleyball, and you and I are still playing 3 or 4 like little legs a year to be able to pay for this apartment for me. I'm able to afford a little beach life there, and I'm just sitting writing songs. So all those like New Morning Light and Money Box and all those songs, I'm just sitting there with the ADAT and learning how to harmonize with myself and produce myself for the first time.
Huh.
That was that period. So 98. That takes us to write. And then I did Spill. That's why it was important for me to do Spill, because I was like, okay, I'm learning how to do this now. That's why I included New Morning Light on that record and Safe Hands, which I did in my own space. So that was coinciding right at the time we were still playing shows and getting very good at being a 3-piece, you, Brandon, and I. Yeah. And still having these markets that we had opened up so we could go back and play regularly at the Music Farm and at a show in Chicago and Columbus and Minneapolis. So then play Atlanta 6 times a year.
Picking up stones on Saturday, stuffing them in my jeans. It's old habit anyway, but I don't know what that means. All the teachers think there's problem? Is there something wrong at home? I made it up that Mama was drunk, just so they'd leave me alone. No, but I don't know much anyway. I don't know much anyway. I don't know much anyway at all. Billy comes over on Tuesdays and we play video games, and we take turns lying about who's been trying to marry our mamas and to change our names. Well, all the doctors think there's a problem. Is there something wrong inside? Of course there is. Everyone's got some kind of scar to hide. No, but I don't know much anyway. I don't know much anyway. I don't know much anyway at all. I don't know much anyway. I don't know much anyway. I don't know much anyway at all. Somebody please. I don't know much anyway. I don't know much anyway. I don't know much anyway at all.
That's all. That sets up Time Machine basically for me. You're in Atlanta and you're starting to work as a producer. You can fill,
Yeah. At that time, I'd been backgrounding production as we were going. Like I helped Evan and Jaron produce a record with Don.
Yeah.
I think I was just producing with Don a couple of things. Like we did Beth Wood, we did
Chuck Brodsky was your first.
Chuck Brodsky. I love Chuck Brodsky. I love this guy, and
I love his music too.
I think part of it was, my challenge was I was curious how these great songwriters were not making it onto the radio the way we did.
Right.
And they were doing as good or better songs. Acoustic. They just, for whatever reason, my brain was unable to understand why they weren't. So I was going to go try to make it happen. And I, I'd rope everybody in. You sang on Chuck Brodsky's stuff. I would rope in Brandon, whoever I could, to try to reproduce it. And so I started to learn it that way. And that's when I bought my first house. Jill and I moved in, and then we got married like a couple years later. And then not long after that, and during that time was all of those internet records.
Yeah.
And then my mom died, and that flipped my brother and I upside down. Like it happened out of nowhere. And when it did, my parents were divorced at the time, so there were no adults to like usher you through it. And the other, like the divorce, like dad didn't step up and say, "Oh, I got this."
Right.
And mom was adopted and her mother was still alive, but that's it on that side of the family. So and the families had split, so there was really no lane over there. And my brother and I just I just absorbed being the executor to Mom's unexpected passing.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed things.
Yeah.
Pretty significantly. And I remember sitting in that house where we next to Miko and the doghouse in the back and building this kind of weird community in the one street, of
it was great. You had a great scene over there.
It was really awesome. People were just playing music and getting to know each other, and they're friendly, and and then kind of depending on that community, when something bad happened, depending on that community, when something good happened,
right?
That community is what lifted up the John Mayer stuff. That's the same community, but before that had helped Sean with his stuff. Sean Mullins and Brandon and LaBriere and those guys. They were there to play with everybody.
Right.
They
were the wrecking crew in Decatur.
Yeah, and they lived on that street.
Yeah.
They all moved down there.
Yeah. So
out walking. She's a step above the rest. I can't stop talking to myself when I see her Sunday dress. Crowds bow, fall down at her feet. Oh, Miss Lucky Street, and I'm the one she'll meet. She never tires. And she takes me through the fire. My mouth gets dry. She give me wine and then bill all of my desire. She always tells me exactly what she needs. I'm a favorite book and she loves to read. Hula hoop, yeah. I'm chopping through, she never lets me down. She'll keep us spinning around and around and around. Where's she turning now? What does she see? A dancing vision. Oh, frenzied and free. Go hula hoop. The Kool-Aid, the Kool-Aid, Kool-Aid. Out of our heads, and she'll spend all day in bed. I'll ask to see the tricks that she's only got for me. She whirls, she grinds, shimmies and she shakes. She'll always find it, commotion's there to make. Hula hoop, yeah. I'm chopping through it. Hula hoop, yeah. I'm chopping through, she never lets me down. She'll keep us spinning around and around and around.
Yeah. So that was Time Machine in the back there in Doghouse. So that gets us spanning From there right into Time Machine. And we've talked about and covered Time Machine now.
Yeah, that's where you were sending me cassettes, or you were sending me the stuff that you had, and we were doing this collaborative thing, but alone.
Man, it was so crazy too. That brought up something else. I lived in this house in Pasadena where a friend was like, I have an uncle. This guy a distant uncle had passed, and he was a famous, I think I told you the story before. He was a famous car designer. His name was Strother McMinn. Richard McMinn was not his nephew, but like a great nephew or something. He was a distant relation, but the nearest one that he had to take over Strother's house. So basically, I went and lived in there, and then went through all of this person's life to get it all together. I had to get like a estate sale together. So, and he was an accomplished dude. He just didn't have anyone. Like Richard hired me to go and like put all that stuff together. He had an amazing jazz record collection. He had all this like press about his car design stuff where he's on Johnny Carson sometime. I mean, it was really bizarre experience. I'm sitting in there from this vantage point of living in this house in Pasadena for 6 months and fixing it up and getting it ready. You know, John Mayer's just hitting. I'm here in the Atlanta scene. I'm like out in outer space out there, like in this spot, taking care of this like estate. It was so bizarro, right? But that's where Time Machine was born. That's where a lot of these. I wrote so many songs from being like just because it was just me in this place, and it was a little bit of a haunted place anyway. And I just like wake up in the middle of the night and like pick a guitar up and write a song. That's how I mean, it was so instinctual and strange, but I look back at it as, whoa, I wrote that song Cruel Joke on Spill in that spot because I came across this empty box, this box that I had to go through this stuff. And all this dust stuff had been, you know, for 20 years, Strother McMinn had this in his closet. And I was like, okay, what's in here? And I opened up this thing, and it's a beautiful picture. It was his mother. She was a gorgeous Indian woman, and she was like perfectly preserved, and no one had opened it for so long. And I was so haunted by that. I was like, in this space, it was like, that's what Time Machine is kind of born out of for me creatively as well, because I'm writing songs in that space. Wow. And sending them to you. So when you say like it's just you and I only hearing it, our like transmission line, which is still not even cell phones, it's the telephone, is like I'm like on the moon or something, sending messages back.
Right.
I mean, that's what it
feels I remember distinctly listening to it was a cassette that you sent.
Yeah.
And I had just gotten this like 8 or 16 track digital recorder. Mm-hmm. And I remember flying it into that and then just building. And it was like the same emotional experience as sitting next to you. Mm-hmm. And it probably had its own dynamic because I didn't have to ask you to keep playing it over and over again. Right. You know, and I could go explore because I was interested in how little you could put in order to get it to do a thing. Mm-hmm. Like, how small can you make it to make it bigger?
But boy, Billy and the Time Machine, that recording is so interestingly and curious and magnificently produced, because I just came in, as little as you say you put into it, or as pared down as that landscape was, it was such a rich landscape. And when I came in and put the phones on, I could sing like, holy moly. It's like I'm singing I knew that too. I was living out in California around the deserts. I'm like going to Joshua Tree. I knew that landscape. And you got it. Just...
You look at me with study disdain, and you mock my space as if I'm insane. If you took me home, you'd serve me in soup, and all the buzzards in your window